the first time Quinlan Brennan saw the woman in the carved willow mask. She was standing alone near the orchard wall, watching the dancers with the stillness of someone deciding whether to stay or vanish into the summer dark. The midsummer masquerade at Thornwick Manor drew every homesteader, trapper, and farmer from 20 miles around, all crowding the stone courtyard strung with paper lanterns that swayed in the warm breeze. Quinlan had come because Lord Ashford expected it. As the manor's head gamekeeper, he represented the estate whether he wanted to or not. He wore his best jacket, dark wool despite the heat, and a simple black half-mask that covered his eyes and left his jaw bare. Most of the men wore similar plain disguises. The women had gone to more trouble, feathers and silk flowers, and painted designs that caught the lantern light. But the woman by the wall wore something different entirely. Her mask covered the lower half of her face, carved from pale wood and painted with delicate vines that seemed to grow across her cheeks. The craftsmanship was remarkable. Quinlan could see that even from across the courtyard. It left her eyes visible, dark and watchful, and her hair uncovered, black and straight and pulled back with a length of green ribbon. She wore a simple dress, forest green linen that looked homemade but well-fitted, and her arms were bare despite the evening chill creeping in. Strong arms. He noticed that. Not delicate. She had not moved in the 10 minutes he had been watching her. Quinlan crossed the courtyard with his limp barely showing. The old injury to his left leg only troubled him when rain was coming or when he had spent too long on horseback. Tonight it was just a hitch in his stride, nothing that slowed him. He had learned to move through a room like he moved through the forest, steady and unhurried, drawing no more attention than necessary. He stopped beside her at the wall. Up close, he could see her eyes more clearly. Green. An unusual shade, pale like new leaves. "The dancing looks better from out here," he said. She turned her head slightly. Her voice came muffled through the mask, but clear enough. "Does it?" "No, but it is easier to pretend you are enjoying yourself when you do not have to actually participate." A small sound escaped her. It might have been a laugh. "You are the gamekeeper, Brennan, Quinlan," he said. "And you are not from the manor. I gathered that. Lord Ashford does not employ anyone I have not met. I live west of here, near the Pine Barrens." She gestured vaguely toward the hills that rose beyond the orchard. "I gather herbs, sell tinctures and remedies at the market. An herbalist." "Of a sort." Quinlan studied her. The mask truly was excellent work. It fit so perfectly he could not see the ties that must hold it in place. "Did you make that yourself?" "A friend carved it. I painted it." "It is well done." She looked at him properly then, and he saw something shift in her eyes. Wariness, maybe, or surprise that he had approached at all. "Thank you." The music changed. A reel, bright and fast. Couples formed up in lines across the courtyard. Quinlan held out his hand. "Would you like to prove me wrong about the dancing?" "Wrong how?" "That it is not actually better from out here." She hesitated. He could see her measuring him, deciding. Then she placed her hand in his, and her skin was warm and rough with calluses. A worker's hand. He liked that. They joined the end of one line. The dance was simple enough, the kind everyone knew from childhood. Forward and back, circle left, change partners, return. Quinlan had not danced in years, but his body remembered the steps. His partner moved with surprising grace despite her obvious strength. She held herself carefully, as though worried about taking up too much space, but when the dance required it, she spun and stepped with perfect timing. They did not speak during the dance. The music was too loud and the movements too demanding. But when it ended and they stood catching their breath at the edge of the courtyard, he found himself reluctant to let her return to the wall. "Another?" he asked. She tilted her head. "You do not know me." "That is the point of a masquerade, is it not?" "I suppose it is." They danced the next, and the next after that. Somewhere during the third dance, Quinlan realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, not the polite expression he usually wore at these gatherings, but genuine pleasure. She was clever. When they had a moment between figures, she made small observations about the other dancers, the kind of wry comments that showed she saw more than people expected. She noticed that the blacksmith's daughter kept stepping on her partner's feet, but that he did not seem to mind. She pointed out that Lord Ashford's steward had been refilling his wine cup far too often and was beginning to list sideways when he turned. "You have a good eye," Quinlan said. "I watch people. It is useful in my work." "How so?" "You can tell a great deal about an illness by watching how someone moves, whether they favor one side, whether they are breathing shallowly, whether they are hiding pain." She paused. "You favor your left leg. Old injury, healed badly, probably because you did not rest it properly when it happened." Quinlan blinked. "You learned that from dancing with me." "I learned it from watching you cross the courtyard earlier," he laughed. The sound surprised him. "You are observant. It is my trade." They danced until the musicians took a break, and everyone scattered toward the tables laden with food and drink. Quinlan fetched 2 cups of cider, the good kind that the manor made from their own orchard, sweet and cold. His partner accepted hers with a nod of thanks but did not drink. Of course. "The mask." "I did not think that through," Quinlan said. "It is all right. I am not thirsty." They stood together in a quieter corner of the courtyard, away from the crush around the food tables. The lanterns cast moving shadows across the cobblestones. Somewhere nearby, a group of young men were laughing too loudly, drunk on the manor's generosity. The smell of roasting meat and fresh bread mixed with the summer scent of roses from the garden. "How long have you been gamekeeper here?" she asked. 5 years. I came after I left the militia." "You were a soldier, a scout. I tracked border raiders and monster incursions in the Eastern Territories." He took a drink of his cider. "It was necessary work, but I grew tired of it." "Why?" The question was simple, but it cut close. Quinlan chose his words carefully. "I was good at the tracking, less good at the fighting that came after." She was quiet for a moment. "And here you track game instead of people, and manage the estate's hunting grounds and keep the wolf population from growing too bold and make sure poachers do not take more than they should." He shrugged. "It is useful work, quieter work. Do you miss it, the militia?" "No." She accepted that without pressing. He was grateful for it. Most people pushed when they sensed a story, wanting to dig into whatever wound they had found. She simply stood beside him, comfortable in the silence. The musicians returned. A slower dance this time, the kind where partners stayed together throughout instead of changing. Quinlan set his cup aside and offered his hand again. She took it. This dance brought them closer. His hand at her waist, hers on his shoulder. They moved in circles, slow and steady, and he could feel the warmth of her through the linen of her dress. She was tall. The top of her head came to his chin. He was just over 6 feet, and she could not be far behind. Unusual for a woman, but he found he liked it, liked not having to bend down, liked being able to meet her eyes more easily. "You dance well for someone who was standing alone by the wall when I found you," he said quietly. "I like dancing. I am just usually better at it when no one knows who I am. Because you are an herbalist from the Barrens." Something like that. There was a story there. He could hear it in her voice. But before he could decide whether to ask, someone jostled against them from behind, hard enough that his partner stumbled slightly. Quinlan steadied her automatically, his hand tightening at her waist. "Watch yourself," he said to the man who had bumped them. The man, one of the manor's stable hands, mumbled an apology and moved away. But the moment had broken something. His partner had gone tense in his arms, and when he looked at her, he saw that her hand had gone to her mask, adjusting it. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Fine. I just need a moment." They finished the dance, but her earlier ease had vanished. She held herself stiffly now, and when the music ended, she stepped back quickly. "I should get some air," she said. "I can come with you." "No, thank you, I will be fine." She slipped away through the crowd before he could argue. Quinlan watched her go, troubled. He considered following but decided against it. If she needed space, he would give it to her. He made his way to the drinks table and refilled his cider. Around him, the party continued. Lord Ashford held court near the manor's main entrance, surrounded by the more prosperous farmers and their wives. The man liked attention. He was a decent enough lord, fair in his dealings and not overly harsh with his tenants, but he enjoyed being seen as generous and wise. The masquerade was as much about his reputation as about celebrating the midsummer harvest. Quinlan had no interest in joining that circle. He found a spot near the orchard gate where he could see most of the courtyard and waited. His partner had said she needed air, not that she was leaving. He would give her time and then see if she wanted to dance again. She did not reappear. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The dancing continued, the music bright and lively, but Quinlan's attention was elsewhere. He scanned the courtyard repeatedly, looking for a green dress and a carved mask. Nothing. Finally, he set down his cup and went looking. The courtyard was large, and the party had spread into the surrounding gardens and walkways. He checked the rose garden first, then the herb garden beyond it. A few couples had claimed benches there, talking quietly or not talking at all. None of them were her. He expanded his search. The orchard, the lane that led to the stables, the small chapel at the eastern edge of the manor grounds. He found her near the old well behind the chapel, sitting on the stone wall that surrounded it. She had removed her mask. It lay in her lap, and she was examining it closely, running her fingers along one edge. Quinlan stopped. Even in the dim light from the distant lanterns, he could see her face clearly now. Green skin, small tusks that curved up from her lower jaw, pointed ears that came to delicate tips, an orc. His partner was an orc. She had not seen him yet. She was absorbed in checking the mask, tilting it to catch what little light reached this far from the courtyard. Quinlan stood frozen, his thoughts a tangle. The evening replayed in his mind, her careful way of speaking, her strength. The mask that covered the lower half of her face so completely. She had hidden what she was to attend the masquerade, and he had danced with her, laughed with her, enjoyed every moment of it. His first instinct was anger, not at her, at himself, for not realizing, for being so caught up in her company that he had missed the signs. An herbalist from the Pine Barrens who came alone to a party where everyone else brought family or neighbors, who wore a mask far more elaborate than the simple silk and paper favors most women chose, who watched people like someone used to being watched in return. His second instinct, rising fast behind the first, was different. She had trusted the mask enough to come, to dance, to talk with him. And now she was sitting alone in the dark, checking to see if it was damaged, probably wondering if she could make it through the rest of the evening without anyone else discovering the truth. Quinlan made himself move forward. She heard his footsteps and looked up sharply. When she saw who it was, her whole body went still. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then she stood, clutching the mask. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." She turned away slightly, a reflexive movement as though she could hide what he had already seen. "I should go." "Why? You know why." "Because you are an orc." The word hung between them. She faced him again, and in the faint light he could see her expression clearly, defensive, ashamed, angry, all at once. "Yes," she said, "because I am an orc, because I came here knowing I should not have. Because I thought if I could just have one evening where people did not look at me like I was something dangerous or disgusting, it would be worth the risk." Her voice was rough. I was wrong. The mask broke, she blinked. What? You were checking the mask. I thought it might have cracked when that man bumped into us. It is fine, just a loose tie, she hesitated. Why does it matter? Because if it is fine, you can put it back on and return to the party. You cannot be serious. Why not? Because you know what I am now. Yes. You are an herbalist from the Pine Barrens who has a talent for reading people and who dances better than half the women in that courtyard. Quinlan closed the distance between them. And you are also an orc. I can hold both those things in my head at the same time. She stared at him. Most people cannot. I am not most people. You were a militia scout. You tracked border raiders. How many of those raiders were orcs? Some, not all. He met her eyes. And I have also bought medicine from orc traders and fought beside orc auxiliaries and seen orc children playing the same games human children play. I know the difference between a raider and someone trying to live their life. She looked down at the mask in her hands. I should not have come. This was foolish, maybe, but you did come, and I would like to dance with you again before the night ends. Why? Because I was enjoying myself, because you are good company, because I think you deserve to have the evening you wanted. He paused. And because I would regret letting you leave without saying that. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she lifted the mask and fitted it back over her face. Her fingers worked at the ties behind her head, securing it. When she finished, she looked at him. If anyone else discovers what I am, it will cause trouble, for you as well as for me. Then we will be careful. You are risking your position here. Lord Ashford is not going to dismiss his gamekeeper for dancing with someone at a masquerade. You do not know that. No, Quinlan admitted, but I am willing to find out. She searched his face, looking for dishonesty maybe or mockery. He kept his expression open. Finally, she said, "One more dance, then I am leaving, all right." They walked back to the courtyard together. The party was in full swing now, louder and more chaotic as the wine and cider flowed freely. No one paid them any attention as they rejoined the dancers. The musicians were playing a country reel, fast and energetic. Quinlan took her hand and they threw themselves into it. One dance became two. Two became three. She did not speak much and he did not push her, but some of her earlier ease returned. He caught her watching him between movements, and once, when he spun her particularly well, he saw her eyes crinkle with suppressed laughter. Midnight approached. Lord Ashford called for a final dance, the traditional closing waltz. Couples paired off across the courtyard. Quinlan offered his hand one last time. This waltz was different, slower, more intimate. The lanterns had burned low and the courtyard was full of shadows. He held her carefully, aware of every place they touched. Her hand in his palm against her back, the small distance between them that neither closed. They turned slowly in time with the music. Around them, other couples did the same. The blacksmith and his wife, the miller's son and a girl from one of the outlying farms, Lord Ashford himself, dancing with the widow who managed his household. Quinlan found himself memorizing details. The way his partner tilted her head when she was thinking, the strength in her grip, the green ribbon in her hair that had come slightly loose. The music swelled toward its conclusion. One last turn. One last moment held suspended, and then her mask slipped. It happened fast. The tie she had adjusted by the well must not have been as secure as she thought. The mask shifted, pulling away from her face, and she grabbed for it reflexively. But the movement was too quick, too obvious. The mask fell from her hands and clattered onto the cobblestones. The music stopped. Everyone nearby turned to look. Quinlan heard the moment the recognition spread. A woman gasped. A man swore. Someone said the word orc loud enough to carry. His partner froze. She stood utterly still, her face exposed, her eyes wide with something that looked like panic. Every instinct in her posture screamed flight. Quinlan moved without thinking. He stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of her, not hiding her, just standing close. Then he bent down, picked up the mask, and held it out to her. "Here," he said quietly. She took it with shaking hands. The crowd had grown. More people were turning to stare. Quinlan could feel their eyes on him, on her. Could hear the whispers starting. Lord Ashford had stopped dancing and was making his way toward them through the press of bodies. Quinlan made a decision. He offered his hand to his partner again. "We did not finish the dance." She looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Quinlan, one more turn, then we stop. Everyone is watching." "I know." She glanced at the crowd, at Lord Ashford, who was nearly upon them, at the mask in her hands. Then, with a movement that looked like stepping off a cliff, she set the mask aside on a nearby table and took Quinlan's hand. He pulled her back into the waltz. The musicians, bless them, picked up the music again, hesitantly at first, then more strongly. Quinlan and his partner moved together, and he kept his eyes on her face. Let everyone else stare. Let them whisper. He was dancing with someone who had made him laugh for the first time in months, and he was not going to let fear or propriety take that from him. They finished the dance. When the music ended, he released her carefully. Lord Ashford was waiting. "Brennan," the Lord said. His voice was cold. "A word." "Of course, my lord." Quinlan turned to his partner. She was standing very straight, her chin up, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Thank you for the dances. Brennan, now, go," she said quietly. "I will leave. Wait for me by the orchard gate." "That is not a good idea." "Wait anyway." She hesitated, then nodded once. Quinlan followed Lord Ashford away from the crowd, into the quieter space near the manor's entrance. The Lord did not stop until they were out of earshot of the remaining guests. "What were you thinking?" Ashford demanded. "I was dancing, my lord. With an orc. With a woman who attended your masquerade and caused no trouble until her disguise failed. She had no business being here in the first place. This gathering is for the homesteaders and workers of this estate and the surrounding area, not for savages from the barrens." Quinlan kept his voice level. "She is an herbalist. She sells her wares at the market. By that measure, she is as much a part of this community as anyone else here. She is an orc, Brennan. Do you understand how it looks for my gamekeeper to dance with her in front of everyone? To continue dancing after her disguise was revealed? It looks like I finished what I started." Ashford's face darkened. "You are walking a dangerous line. I am aware, my lord. If you continue this association, it will reflect badly on this estate, on me." "I understand. Do you?" Ashford stepped closer. "I value your service, Brennan. You are good at your work. But I will not have my gamekeeper courting an orc. It is inappropriate and it undermines the order we maintain here. You will end whatever this is. Immediately." Quinlan met his eyes. "And if I do not, then you will find yourself seeking employment elsewhere." The threat was clear. Quinlan had expected it, but hearing it spoken still sent a cold weight through his chest. He had worked for 5 years to build a life here. A steady position. A place that felt, if not like home, at least like refuge, and Lord Ashford was willing to take it from him over a dance. "I will consider what you have said, my lord," Quinlan said carefully. "See that you do more than consider it." Ashford turned away. Dismissed. Quinlan walked back through the courtyard. Most of the guests had dispersed now, the party breaking up in the wake of the disruption. A few clusters remained, talking in low voices. He felt their eyes on him but did not acknowledge them. He found his partner waiting by the orchard gate as he had asked. She had retrieved her mask but had not put it back on. It hung from her hand by its ties. "You should not have waited," he said. "What did Lord Ashford say?" That I should end whatever this is before it costs me my position. She flinched. I am sorry. I did not mean to cause you trouble. You did not cause anything. I made my own choices. He looked at her properly. In the faint light from the dying lanterns, her green skin seemed almost gray. Her tusks caught small gleams when she moved. I do not even know your name. Kira Prell. Kira. He tested the name. It suited her. I meant what I said in there. I enjoyed this evening. Even the part where you were threatened by your employer because of me. That part was less pleasant, he admitted. But the rest was worth it. She shook her head. You are a strange man, Quinlan Brennan. So I have been told. They stood together in the quiet. The party sounds were fading behind them. Soon the courtyard would be empty except for servants clearing away the remnants of the celebration. Where do you live exactly? Quinlan asked. You said the Pine Barrens. A cabin about 8 miles west of here, near the old lumber road. I know the area. I patrol it sometimes when I am checking the far boundaries. Then you know it is not close. I should start back. At midnight, alone. I have walked it before, not after a night like this. He made a decision. I will walk with you. That is not necessary. Maybe not. But I would prefer to know you made it home safely. She studied him. Lord Ashford will not like it if he hears you spent the night walking an orc home. Then we will not tell him. A small smile crossed her face, fleeting but genuine. All right, if you insist. They left the manor grounds together and struck out west along the road that led into the hills. The night was clear and the moon was bright enough to see by. Quinlan knew these roads well. He had walked or ridden every mile of the estate's lands in his 5 years as gamekeeper. The Pine Barrens marked the western edge of Lord Ashford's territory, where the cultivated fields gave way to wild forest. They walked in silence for the first mile. Kira moved with an easy stride, her long legs covering ground steadily. She had not bothered to put her mask back on. No point now. How long have you lived out here? Quinlan asked eventually. 3 years. I moved from a settlement farther north after my teacher died. Your teacher, the woman who trained me in herb lore. She was old and had no family. When she passed, there was nothing to keep me there. So you came here. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere I could work without too many questions. She glanced at him. It has mostly worked, except tonight. Tonight was my own foolishness. I knew better. Why did you come to the masquerade? She was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted to feel normal, just for one evening. I wanted to dance and talk and not have people look at me like I am something to fear or hate. Her voice was steady, but he heard the loneliness beneath it. I thought if I could hide what I am, I could have that. Did it work? For a while. Until it did not. They walked on. The road climbed gradually into the hills, leaving the manor's fields behind. Trees closed in on either side, pine and oak mixed together. Night birds called from the branches. Somewhere distant, a fox barked. What will you do now? Kira asked. What do you mean about your position? Lord Ashford was clear. He was. So what will you do? Quinlan considered the question. The honest answer was that he did not know. 5 years ago, when he had come to Thornwick Manor looking for work, he had been running from something. From the memory of his last mission with the militia. From the failure that still woke him some nights, chest tight and breath shallow. He had thought that putting distance between himself and that life would be enough. That steady, quiet work would let him forget. It had not. But it had at least given him a place to exist without constantly being reminded of what he had lost. I will decide in the morning, he said finally. That is not much of a plan. No, but it is all I have at the moment. They reached a fork in the road. Kira turned left onto a narrower track that wound deeper into the forest. Quinlan followed. The trees were thicker here, their branches forming a canopy that blocked much of the moonlight. He had to watch his footing on the uneven ground. How much farther? He asked. Another 2 miles. They continued in companionable silence. Quinlan found himself relaxing despite the upheaval of the evening. There was something soothing about walking through the forest at night. The quiet, the smell of pine and earth, the rhythm of footsteps on dirt. He had missed this. The militia had been constant movement, constant vigilance. As gamekeeper, he spent his days in the woods, but always with a purpose. Checking traps, tracking deer, looking for signs of wolves or poachers. This aimless walking, just for the sake of it, was a luxury he rarely allowed himself. Kira's cabin appeared suddenly, a darker shape against the trees. It was small but well built, with a stone chimney and shuttered windows. A garden plot stretched along one side, neat rows of plants he could not identify in the darkness. A small shed stood behind the cabin, probably for storage. "This is me," Kira said. Quinlan looked around. "It is a good location, far enough from the main roads for privacy." "That was the idea," she hesitated. "Would you like to come in? I could make tea. It is a long walk back." "I do not want to impose. You walked 8 miles to see me home." "Tea is the least I can offer," he smiled. "Then yes, thank you." The inside of the cabin was as tidy as the outside. One main room with a fireplace, a table and chairs, shelves lined with jars and bottles and bundles of dried herbs, a narrow bed in one corner. A door that probably led to a small storage room or pantry. The air smelled of sage and something sweeter that Quinlan could not identify. Kira lit a lamp and set about making tea. Quinlan stood near the fireplace, looking at the shelves. The jars were labeled in neat handwriting. Yarrow, calendula, comfrey, elderflower, dozens more he did not recognize. "You have quite a collection," he said. "It takes a lot of variety to treat different ailments. Some herbs are good for fevers, others for wounds, others for pain. I try to keep a stock of everything I might need." "Where do you find them all?" "Some I grow, some I gather from the forest, a few I trade for at the market." She poured hot water from a kettle into 2 cups and added dried leaves from one of the jars. "This is mint and chamomile, good for settling nerves." They sat at the table. Quinlan wrapped his hands around the warm cup and breathed in the steam. The tea was fragrant and soothing. "I am sorry the evening ended the way it did," Kira said quietly. "You have already apologized." "I know, but I feel I should say it again. You did not deserve to be put in that position." "I chose to be in that position. You did not force me to keep dancing." "Why did you?" She looked at him directly. "You could have let me leave. It would have been easier." Quinlan took a sip of tea, buying himself time to think. The answer mattered. He could feel that. "A long time ago," he said slowly, "I was part of a militia unit stationed along the eastern border. We tracked raiding parties and monster incursions. One night we got word that a village was under attack. We arrived too late to save most of it, but there were survivors barricaded in the temple. Raiders were trying to break in." He paused. Kira waited, patient. "We engaged the raiders, fought them back. But during the fight I saw one of them grab a girl, maybe 15 years old. She was trying to run and he caught her, dragged her toward the forest." Quinlan stared into his cup. "I had a clear shot. Could have stopped him, but I froze. I do not know why. Fear, exhaustion, something. By the time I moved, they were gone into the trees. We searched but never found her." "Quinlan." "I left the militia 2 months later, came here. Took the gamekeeper position because it was quiet and far from the border and I thought I could just forget." He looked up at her. "But I have not forgotten. I think about that girl every time I have to make a choice. Every time I could act or not act. And I promised myself that I would never freeze again, that if I saw someone who needed help I would move." Kira's eyes were bright in the lamplight. "So when my mask fell, I moved. I did not think about it. I just knew that you were standing there and everyone was staring and you looked like you wanted to disappear, and I could either let that happen or I could do something. He set his cup down. It was not a difficult choice. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her skin was warm. "Thank you." They sat like that for a moment, then Kira withdrew her hand and stood. "You should rest before you walk back. The bed is yours. I can sleep in the chair. I am not taking your bed. Then we will both sleep in chairs. But you are not walking 8 miles back to the manor in the middle of the night after everything that has happened." Quinlan wanted to argue, but exhaustion was creeping up on him. The evening had been long and emotionally fraught. His leg was aching. The thought of the long walk back was distinctly unappealing. "All right," he said, "but I am taking the chair. You sleep in your own bed. We can discuss it." They did not discuss it. Kira brought him a blanket and he settled into the chair near the fireplace. It was not particularly comfortable, but he had slept in worse places. Kira extinguished the lamp and retreated to her bed. Quinlan could hear the rustle of fabric as she settled. "Quinlan?" Her voice came soft from the darkness. "Yes, I am glad you came to the masquerade." "So am I." He closed his eyes and let sleep take him. Morning came with sunlight streaming through the cabin's single window. Quinlan woke stiff and sore from the chair. His leg was complaining loudly. He stretched carefully, working out the worst of the kinks. Kira was already up, working at the table. She had changed into different clothes, practical trousers and a loose shirt better suited to working than the dress she had worn the night before. Her hair was tied back in a simple braid. "There is porridge," she said without looking up, "and tea." "Thank you." He helped himself to a bowl from the pot on the table. The porridge was plain but good, sweetened with honey. The tea was the same mint blend from the night before. Kira was grinding something with a mortar and pestle, her movements steady and practiced. "How is your leg this morning?" "Sore." "The chair was not ideal. I told you to take the bed. And I told you I would not." She smiled slightly. "Stubborn. I have been called worse." When he finished eating, he washed his bowl in the basin near the fireplace and set it to dry. Kira was still working, adding pinches of different powders to a small jar. "I should head back," Quinlan said. "To the manor?" "Yes. I need to know whether I still have a position." Kira set down the mortar. "If you do not because of last night, then I will find something else. I am a good tracker, good hunter. Someone will have use for those skills. But you like it here." He considered that. "I did, but I am discovering there are things I like more than a comfortable position." She looked at him then, and he saw something warm in her eyes. "Will I see you again?" "If you want to, I do." "Then yes, you will see me again." He walked to the door. Before he opened it, he turned back. "Kira, that mask you wore, do you still have the friend who carved it?" "I carved it myself." "Why?" "Because it was beautiful work. And because, if you ever decide to attend another masquerade, you should not have to hide." She did not say anything, but the look on her face stayed with him the entire walk back to the manor. Lord Ashford was waiting when Quinlan returned. The Lord was in his study, a wood-paneled room lined with books and hunting trophies. He looked up when Quinlan entered. "I expected you back last night," Ashford said. "I walked the herbalist home. It was late when we arrived, so I rested before returning." "You spent the night at her cabin." It was not a question. Quinlan did not bother denying it. "I slept in a chair. Nothing inappropriate occurred. Brennan, we discussed this. You gave me an ultimatum, my lord. I have not forgotten." Ashford leaned back in his chair. "Then you understand that if you continue to associate with that orc, you will no longer be welcome as my gamekeeper." "I understand." And, Quinlan met his eyes, "I would like to propose an alternative." "I am listening." "I will resign my position as gamekeeper. But I ask that you allow me to stay on the estate's lands until I can secure other housing. A month, perhaps 2. In exchange, I will continue to perform my duties during that time without pay. Ashford frowned. Why would I agree to that? Because finding a new gamekeeper will take time, and in the meantime your lands will need management. This way you have continuity while you search for my replacement. The Lord was silent for a long moment. You are serious about this orc. Her name is Kira. And yes, I am serious. You barely know her. I know enough. Ashford shook his head. You are throwing away a good position for a woman you danced with at a party. I am making a choice not to let fear dictate my actions. There is a difference. Fear of what? Of living with regret. Ashford studied him. Finally he said, 2 months. You may stay on the estate and perform your duties for 2 months without pay. After that you leave. And Brennan, I expect full effort during those 2 months. Do not think you can coast simply because you are not being compensated. You will have my best work, my lord. You always have. See that I do. Dismissed. Quinlan left the study feeling lighter than he had in years. He had a timeline now. 2 months to figure out what came next. 2 months to see if what he felt for Kira was real or just the product of one unusual evening. He suspected it was real. But time would tell. The next week passed in a blur of work. Quinlan threw himself into his duties with renewed focus. He repaired fence lines in the northern pastures, relocated a family of badgers that had taken up residence too close to the grain stores, tracked and documented the movements of a deer herd that had been grazing at the edge of the estate's orchards. He also made time to visit Kira. The first visit was 3 days after the masquerade. He rode out to her cabin in the late afternoon, carrying a brace of rabbits he had trapped that morning. I thought you might have use for these, he said when she opened the door. Kira looked at the rabbits, then at him. Are you trying to court me with dead animals? Is it working? Ask me after I have made stew. He helped her prepare the rabbits, skinning and cleaning them while she chopped vegetables from her garden. They worked in comfortable silence, and when the stew was simmering over the fire, they sat outside on a bench Kira had built near the cabin's entrance. How did your conversation with Lord Ashford go? She asked. I resigned. She turned to stare at him. You what? I resigned my position. I have 2 months left on the estate, and then I will need to find something else. Quinlan, you should not have done that. I did not do it lightly. But your position, your income, will be replaced by something else. I am not worried. She shook her head. You are either very brave or very foolish, possibly both. They talked as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Kira told him about her work, the different remedies she was preparing for the changing season. Quinlan told her about the estate's lands, the patterns he had noticed in the wildlife populations, the challenges of managing a territory this size. It was easy. That was what struck him most. Talking to her was easy in a way conversation rarely was for him. She listened when he spoke and offered her own thoughts without judgment. She laughed at his dry observations and challenged him when she disagreed. He visited again 2 days later, and then 3 days after that. Each visit felt natural, unforced. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he brought nothing but his company. Kira never seemed to mind. On his 4th visit, she was working in her garden when he arrived. He helped her harvest the ripe vegetables, filling a basket with squash and beans and late-season tomatoes. His leg was bothering him more than usual. He had spent the previous day on horseback, riding the far boundaries of the estate, and the extended time in the saddle had aggravated the old injury. Kira noticed his limp when they carried the harvest inside. Your leg is worse today. It will pass. It always does. Let me look at it. It is fine, Kira. Quinlan. Let me look at it. He sighed and sat in the chair near the fireplace. Kira knelt beside him and carefully rolled up his trouser leg. The scar was visible, a long, jagged line that ran from his knee halfway up his thigh. The tissue around it was slightly swollen. Kira's fingers were gentle as she examined the area. This was a blade wound. A raider's axe, actually. He caught me during a skirmish along the border. It healed poorly. I can feel where the muscle knitted wrong. The militia surgeon did what he could. We were in the field. Not exactly ideal conditions. She stood and went to her shelves, selecting several jars. I am going to make a salve. It will not fix the underlying damage, but it will help with the inflammation and pain. You do not have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. She worked quickly, mixing ingredients in a small bowl. When she was satisfied, she returned to his side and began applying the salve to his leg. Her touch was sure and practiced, the movements of someone who had done this many times before. The salve was cool against his skin, and it smelled faintly of mint and something sharper. Almost immediately he felt some of the pain ease. "That is remarkable," he said. "Give it a few minutes. It will work better as it absorbs." She was right. By the time she finished applying the salve and rolled his trouser leg, the ache in his leg had diminished to a dull throb. "You have a real gift," Quinlan said. "It is just practice and knowledge. Anyone could learn it." "I doubt that. This requires patience and precision." "Not everyone has those qualities." She sat back on her heels. "How did you get the wound? You said a skirmish, but not much else." Quinlan hesitated. He did not talk about his militia days often, but Kira had been honest with him. She deserved the same. "It was during the engagement where I lost the girl I told you about. The raiders were better armed than we expected, better trained. We managed to drive them off, but it cost us." He touched his leg absently. "I took the axe blow while trying to reach the girl, went down hard. By the time my unit got me clear and stopped the bleeding, the raiders were gone." "So you were injured trying to save her." "I was injured failing to save her. There is a difference." Kira was quiet for a moment. "You know it was not your fault, do not you, that you froze?" "Knowing it and believing it are different things." "Yes, they are." She stood and washed her hands in the basin. "But punishing yourself will not change what happened, and holding yourself to impossible standards will not prevent it from happening again. I am not punishing myself." "Are you not? You left a career you were good at, took a job in the middle of nowhere. Avoid talking about your past. That sounds like punishment to me." Quinlan did not have a good answer for that. Kira did not push. She simply returned to her work, leaving him to sit with his thoughts. He visited again the following week, and the week after that. The visits became routine. He would ride out to her cabin after finishing his work for the day, and they would spend the evening together. Sometimes they worked side by side, Quinlan helping with repairs to the cabin or chopping firewood while Kira tended her garden or prepared remedies. Sometimes they simply talked. Slowly, carefully, they learned each other. Quinlan discovered that Kira had a dry sense of humor that emerged when she was comfortable. That she hummed while she worked, tuneless melodies that seemed to come from nowhere. That she had a habit of tilting her head when she was thinking, like a bird listening for something distant. Kira learned that Quinlan was more observant than he let on, that he noticed small details most people missed, that he had strong opinions about woodworking techniques and could discourse at length about the best way to join a frame, that he went quiet when something was bothering him, retreating into his own head until he had worked through it. They did not talk about what they were becoming to each other. That felt too fragile to name, but Quinlan knew. He had known since the night of the masquerade, when she had taken his hand and trusted him enough to keep dancing. 6 weeks after the masquerade, the first real cold snap arrived. Quinlan woke to frost on the grass and ice at the edges of the water troughs. Winter was coming early this year. He could feel it in the air. He rode out to Kira's cabin that afternoon, worried. Her home was well built but isolated. If the snows came heavy, she could be cut off from the market and any help. She was outside when he arrived, securing shutters and checking the roof for weak spots. He dismounted and joined her. "Cold enough for you," he called up. She looked down from the ladder. "I have been through worse winters. This cabin is solid. Do you have enough firewood?" "I will by the time I am done cutting. There are several downed trees behind the shed." "I will help." They spent the afternoon cutting and splitting wood, building up the stack beside the cabin. It was hard work, and Quinlan's breath steamed in the cold air. But it felt good, purposeful. When they finished, Kira made hot cider and they sat inside by the fire. Quinlan's hands were sore from the axe work, and he flexed them slowly, working out the stiffness. "You are thinking about something," Kira said. "How can you tell? You get a line between your eyebrows when you are working through a problem." He smiled. "I was thinking about winter. And about what happens when my time at the manor ends. You have a month left, 5 weeks. Lord Ashford has been interviewing replacements. Has he found anyone? Not yet, but he will." Kira set down her cup. "What will you do after? I am not sure yet. I have been asking around. There is a homestead about 15 miles south that needs someone to manage their livestock through the winter, and a trapper up north who is looking for a partner. Both are possibilities. 15 miles south is far, I know." They sat in silence. Quinlan could hear the fire crackling and the wind picking up outside. Finally he said, "I could stay closer, if there was a reason to." Kira looked at him. "What kind of reason? The kind where I see you more than once a week. Where I do not have to ride 8 miles every time I want to talk to you, Quinlan." "I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give," he said quickly. "But I need to know if this, what we have been building, is something you want to continue. Because if it is, I will find a way to stay close. And if it is not, I will take one of those other positions and we can part as friends." Kira was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then she said, "I want you to stay close, but I do not want you to give up opportunities for me." "You are the opportunity, Kira. Everything else is just work." She shook her head, but she was smiling. "You are impossible. Is that a yes?" "It is a yes." Relief flooded through him. He reached across and took her hand. She threaded her fingers through his, and they sat like that while the fire burned down and the evening deepened into night. The next day, Quinlan began asking different questions. Not about jobs far away, but about land, available parcels, homesteads for sale or lease. Anything within a few miles of Kira's cabin. The search was harder than he expected. Most of the land in the area was either part of Lord Ashford's estate or already claimed by long-established families. But he kept looking, kept asking. 2 weeks before his time at the manor ended, he found something. An old trapper's cabin and 10 acres about 3 miles east of Kira's place. The previous owner had died the year before, and the land had reverted to the local magistrate. It was available for a reasonable price, and the cabin, while run down, was salvageable. Quinlan rode out to look at it on a gray afternoon that threatened snow. The cabin was worse than he had hoped but better than he had feared. The roof needed repair. The door hung crooked on its hinges. But the foundation was sound and the chimney intact. With work, it could be livable. He walked the land, examining the boundaries and the resources. There was a stream that ran along the eastern edge, clean and fast-moving. Good timber in the surrounding forest. Deer sign everywhere. It was rough, but it had potential. He brought Kira to see it the next day. She walked around the cabin slowly, testing the walls, checking the windows. "It needs a lot of work, I know. The roof is half gone. I can fix that. And the door and the floor and probably half the interior supports. Are you trying to discourage me or help me plan?" She turned to face him. I am trying to make sure you know what you are getting into. I know, but it is close to you. That matters more than the condition of the roof. She walked to where he stood. You are serious about buying this place? I am. And you will fix it up and live here. That is the plan. 3 miles from my cabin, yes, she looked up at him. That is very close. Is it too close? No, it is exactly close enough. He bought the land the following week. The magistrate was happy to have it off his books, and the price was fair. Quinlan paid with the savings he had accumulated over his 5 years as gamekeeper. It left him with little in reserve, but he had the land. That was what mattered. He spent his final 2 weeks at the manor working double duty. During the days, he fulfilled his obligations to Lord Ashford, training the man who would replace him and ensuring the transition would be smooth. During the evenings and weekends, he worked on his new cabin, repairing the roof and reinforcing the walls. Kira helped when she could. She was stronger than she looked, and she had a good eye for structural problems. Together they made progress, slowly transforming the wreck into something livable. On Quinlan's last day as gamekeeper, Lord Ashford called him into the study one final time. "Your replacement starts tomorrow," the Lord said. "I trust you have prepared him adequately. He is competent and motivated. He will serve you well." "Good." Ashford paused. "I will not pretend to understand your choices, Brennan, but you have fulfilled your obligations honorably. I respect that. Thank you, my lord. What will you do now? I have purchased land to the west. I will farm and trap and manage as best I can. Near the orc's cabin, I presume." 3 miles east of it, yes. Ashford shook his head. "I hope you know what you are doing." "So do I, my lord." That evening, Quinlan moved the last of his possessions from the manor to his new cabin. It was not much: clothes, tools, a few books, his weapons. Everything fit in 2 packs that he loaded onto his horse. Kira was waiting when he arrived. She had brought food, a venison stew that filled the cabin with warmth and rich scent. They ate together at the table Quinlan had repaired the week before, and afterward they sat by the fire. "How does it feel?" Kira asked. "To be done with the manor, strange, good, a little frightening." "Frightening how? I have not been without a steady position in 5 years. It is strange to be starting over." "You are not starting over, you are starting new. There is a difference." He smiled. "Is there? Starting over implies you are going back to where you were. Starting new means you are going somewhere different." "And where am I going?" She leaned against him, her shoulder warm against his. "I think you are going wherever you want. That is the point." They sat together as the fire burned low. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of coming snow. Winter was almost here. The first snow fell 3 days later. It came overnight, soft and thick, blanketing the forest in white. Quinlan woke to a world transformed. The trees were heavy with snow, their branches bending under the weight. The stream was lined with ice. Everything was quiet, muffled. He spent the morning checking his cabin, making sure the repairs would hold against the winter weather. The roof was solid. The door sealed properly. The chimney drew well. He had done good work. In the afternoon, he hiked over to Kira's cabin to check on her. The snow was knee-deep in places, and the walk took longer than usual, but he needed to know she was all right. She answered the door wrapped in a thick shawl, her breath steaming in the cold air. "You did not have to walk all the way here. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed." "I am fine. The cabin is warm and I have plenty of supplies." "Good." She stepped aside. "Come in before you freeze." He entered gratefully, stamping snow from his boots. The cabin was warm, the fire burning brightly. Kira had been working, he saw. Her table was covered with jars and bundles of herbs, preparing for winter, he asked, always. "People get sick more often when it is cold. I need to have remedies ready." He helped her organize the jars, sorting them by type and use. They worked in comfortable silence, and when they finished, Kira made tea. They were sitting by the fire when they heard the howl. It was distant but unmistakable. A wolf, and not just one. Several calling to each other across the forest. Quinlan stood and went to the window. He could not see anything through the snow-laden trees, but he knew the sound. A pack, and close enough to be concerning. "They are hunting," Kira said from behind him. "Yes, and they will be hungry. Winter is hard on wolves. Will they come near the cabins, possibly, if they are desperate enough?" He stayed alert as the afternoon wore on. The howls came again, closer this time. The pack was moving, following some trail through the forest. Quinlan checked his weapons. He had brought his bow and knife, as he always did when traveling. They would have to do. The attack came at dusk. Quinlan heard the commotion first, a crashing in the underbrush and the panicked bleating of an animal in distress. He grabbed his bow and ran outside. Kira followed, holding a thick staff she used for hiking. The scene was chaos. 3 wolves had cornered a young deer against a fallen tree, and they were closing in for the kill. But the deer was not alone. A 4th wolf had broken away from the pack and was circling toward Kira's shed, where she kept her goat. Quinlan made a split-second decision. The deer was already lost. The goat he could save. He knocked an arrow and loosed it in one smooth motion. The shaft took the circling wolf in the shoulder, and it yelped and staggered. Not a killing shot, but enough to drive it back. The other wolves turned at the sound. They saw Quinlan and Kira standing between them and easier prey, and their eyes gleamed in the fading light. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the largest wolf, a gray beast with scars across its muzzle, lunged. Quinlan shot it mid-leap. The arrow caught it in the chest and it fell, tumbling into the snow. The other 2 wolves hesitated, then turned and fled into the forest. The injured wolf limped after them, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. Quinlan stood breathing hard, his bow still raised. Beside him, Kira lowered her staff. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am fine. You, fine." They checked the shed. The goat was shaken but unharmed. The deer the wolves had cornered was dead, its throat torn open. Quinlan looked at it sadly. "At least the wolves will eat tonight," Kira said. "Yes, but they will be back. A pack this bold will not stop with one kill." "What do? We prepare. And we watch." Over the next week, the wolves became a constant presence. Quinlan saw their tracks around both cabins. They took another deer from the forest near his land and killed a fox that had been denning near the stream. They were growing bolder, and that was dangerous. He spent his days reinforcing the sheds and pens around both properties, making sure no livestock could be easily taken. He set traps and alarms, simple things that would alert him if the pack came too close. Kira worked alongside him, her strength and practicality invaluable. Together they built barriers and stockpiled wood and made plans for what to do if the wolves attacked in force. On the 8th day, the pack struck at the manor. Quinlan heard about it from a rider who stopped at his cabin looking for help. The wolves had gotten into the sheep pens just before dawn, killing 3 ewes and scattering the rest of the flock. Lord Ashford's new gamekeeper had driven them off, but the damage was done. Lord Ashford is asking for anyone with hunting experience to help track the pack, the rider said. He is offering a bounty for every wolf killed, Quinlan considered. He no longer worked for the manor and he owed Ashford nothing, but the pack was a threat to everyone in the area, including Kira, and he was good at tracking. "I will help," he said. "Give me an hour to prepare." He rode to Kira's cabin first to let her know where he was going. "Be careful," she said. "Wolves are dangerous when cornered, I know, but this needs to be done. Then do it, and come back safe." He kissed her forehead, a brief touch that felt both too much and not enough, and rode for the manor. The hunting party assembled in the courtyard. 6 men, including Quinlan and the new gamekeeper, a young man named Thomas who looked both eager and nervous. Lord Ashford addressed them briefly, outlining the problem and the bounty, then sent them on their way. Quinlan took the lead. The wolf tracks were easy to follow in the snow, and he set a steady pace through the forest. The pack had headed west, deeper into the wild lands beyond the estate's boundaries. They tracked for 3 hours before they found the wolves. The pack had denned in a rocky outcrop, a natural shelter that gave them protection from the wind and snow. Quinlan counted 6 adults and at least 3 pups. The gray leader he had shot earlier was there, its shoulder wound healing but still visible. "We go in quiet," Quinlan said. "Bows first. Only use blades if they close on us." The men spread out, taking positions around the outcrop. Quinlan waited until everyone was ready, then gave the signal. The first volley took down 2 wolves. The pack erupted from the den, snarling and snapping. The gray leader charged straight at Quinlan, and he shot it through the eye. It dropped instantly. The fight was brutal and quick. 3 more wolves fell to arrows and blades. The remaining adult fled into the forest with the pups, abandoning the den. When it was over, Quinlan stood in the snow surrounded by dead wolves and breathing hard. His leg ached from the exertion, and his hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. Thomas approached, his face pale. "Is it always like that?" "Only when you are lucky," Quinlan said. "If you are unlucky, they scatter before you can engage and you have to track them for days." They collected the bodies and returned to the manor. Lord Ashford paid the bounty as promised, and Quinlan took his share. It was good money, enough to buy supplies for the winter and replace the tools he had used to repair his cabin. But more importantly, the threat was ended. The remaining wolves would not trouble the area again, not without a full pack to support them. He rode back to his cabin as the sun set, tired and sore but satisfied. He had done good work. Work that mattered. Kira was waiting for him. She had seen him coming and had hot food ready, a thick stew and fresh bread. He ate ravenously, and when he finished she examined his hands, checking for injuries. "You were careful," she said. "I was." "Good." She made him sit while she prepared a hot compress for his leg. The wolf hunt had aggravated the old injury, and the pain was sharp. But under her hands it eased, the warmth and pressure of the compress working its magic. "Thank you," he said. "You are welcome." They sat together by the fire. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. Winter had truly arrived, Quinlan, Kira said quietly. "Yes." "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About how we live 3 miles apart. About how you walk over here almost every day, even in the snow. About how I worry every time you leave that something will happen and I will not be there to help." He turned to look at her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that 3 miles feels too far, and I am wondering if you have thought about that too." He had. Of course he had, but he had not wanted to push. Kira valued her independence, her solitude. He did not want to take that from her. "I have thought about it," he said carefully. "But I did not want to assume." "I am not good at this," she said, "at letting people close. I have spent so long keeping everyone at a distance because it was easier than dealing with the way they looked at me, the way they treated me. I know. But you do not look at me like that. You never have, and I think I am ready to stop keeping you at a distance." His heart was pounding. "What does that mean?" "It means I want you closer, not 3 miles away, here with me." She met his eyes. "If you want that too." "I do," he said without hesitation. "I have wanted that for weeks." "Then stay, not just tonight, all the time. Make this your home too." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. She leaned into him, solid and warm and real. "Yes," he said. "Yes." They began combining their lives in the weeks that followed. Quinlan moved most of his possessions to Kira's cabin, which was larger and better situated. He kept his own cabin as a workspace, using it to store tools and equipment and to work on projects that needed space. Living together was an adjustment. They had to learn each other's rhythms, the small habits and preferences that mattered in close quarters. Kira liked to wake early and work while the morning was still quiet. Quinlan preferred to stay up late, sitting by the fire and thinking. They negotiated, compromised, found a balance. But mostly it was easy. They worked well together. They enjoyed the same quiet pleasures, long walks in the forest, good food shared by the fire, the simple satisfaction of building something with their hands, and slowly, carefully, they built something more than a shared home. They built a partnership, a life. Winter deepened. The snow piled higher and the days grew shorter. Quinlan trapped and hunted, providing meat and furs that Kira could trade at the market. Kira made her remedies and tended the sick who braved the cold to seek her help. Together they managed, surviving the harsh season through skill and stubbornness. The people of the area slowly accepted their arrangement. Some still muttered about the human who lived with an orc, but most were too practical to care much. Quinlan was a good hunter and Kira was a skilled healer. Both were useful, and usefulness went a long way toward earning tolerance if not acceptance. On a night in deep winter, when the cold was bitter and the stars were sharp overhead, Quinlan and Kira sat by the fire in their cabin. They had just finished dinner and Kira was mending a tear in one of his shirts. "I have been thinking," Quinlan said. "You do that often. About us, about what comes next." She set down the mending. "What do you mean? We have built a good life here, a home. But it is still temporary in some ways. We are not bound by anything formal. Does that bother you?" "No, but I think I would like it to be more than temporary. I think I would like it to be permanent." Kira was very still. "Quinlan, I am not good with words," he said. "I never have been. But I know what I feel. I know that I want to spend my life with you. I know that I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I know that whatever comes, I want us to face it together." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a ring, simple and handmade. He had carved it from a piece of oak and polished it smooth. "It is not much," he said, "but it is honest, like us." Kira stared at the ring. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "Yes, if you will have me." She did not answer right away. She took the ring and examined it, turning it over in her hands. Then she slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Yes," she said, "I will have you." He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home. They were married a month later on the first day of spring. The ceremony was small, just the two of them and a traveling priest who happened to be passing through the area. They spoke their vows in the clearing between their two cabins, with the forest as witness. Kira wore a simple dress, green like her skin but a shade darker. Quinlan wore his best clothes, cleaned and mended. The priest spoke the traditional words and they repeated them, binding themselves to each other in the eyes of whatever gods might be listening. When it was done, the priest blessed them and departed. Quinlan and Kira stood alone in the clearing, husband and wife. "Well," Kira said, "that is done." "Regret it already," she smiled. "Ask me in 50 years. They returned to the cabin and celebrated in their own quiet way. A good meal, warm cider, the simple pleasure of each other's company. That night, lying beside her in the darkness, Quinlan felt something he had not felt in years. Peace. The kind that came from knowing you were exactly where you were meant to be. Spring arrived in full, bringing green to the forest and warmth to the days. Quinlan and Kira expanded the garden, planting vegetables and herbs that would sustain them through the next winter. They repaired the fences and cleared new land and planned for the future. In late spring, Kira told him she was pregnant. The news filled him with a joy so fierce it was almost frightening. He had not thought much about children, had not let himself imagine that future. But now that it was here, he wanted it desperately. They prepared through the summer. Quinlan built a cradle from pine, carving it smooth and sturdy. Kira gathered the herbs and supplies she would need for the birth. They talked late into the night about names and futures, and all the things they hoped for this child. The baby came in early winter, during the first snowfall of the season. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Quinlan feared he might lose them both. But Kira was strong, and when it was over she held a tiny, squalling infant in her arms, a girl. Green-skinned like her mother, with small tusks just beginning to show and eyes that were bright and curious. "What should we call her?" Kira asked, exhausted but smiling. Quinlan thought. They had discussed names, but none of them felt quite right now that she was here and real. "Helena," he said finally, "if you like it." Kira looked down at the baby. "Helena, yes, that is good." Helena grew quickly. She was healthy and strong, and she had her mother's determination and her father's quiet watchfulness. Quinlan loved her with an intensity that surprised him, this small person who depended on them for everything. Life settled into a new rhythm. The days were full of work and care, of tending the garden and the baby and each other. It was hard, sometimes exhausting, but it was good. 2 years after Helena was born, Kira became pregnant again. This time the birth was easier, and they welcomed a son. They named him Alder, and he had his father's brown hair and his mother's green eyes. The cabin felt full now, alive with children and laughter and the constant motion of growing lives. Quinlan expanded the cabin, adding a second room for the children and reinforcing the structure to handle the extra use. He had never been happier. One evening, when Helena was 4 and Alder was 2, Quinlan sat outside the cabin watching the sunset. The children were inside with Kira, and he could hear their voices through the open window. Helena was telling some elaborate story about a bird she had seen, and Alder was making happy nonsense sounds. The life he had now was so different from the one he had imagined for himself. 5 years ago he had been alone, haunted by old failures, convinced that he was meant to live in quiet isolation until the past stopped hurting. And then he had met Kira at a masquerade, had danced with her while she hid behind a carved mask, had made the choice when that mask fell to pull her back, and instead of letting her flee, that choice had changed everything. He thought about the girl he had failed to save, all those years ago during the border raid. He would never know what happened to her, would never be able to make that right, but he had learned from it. Had learned that freezing in the face of fear was the worst choice he could make. That action, even imperfect action, was better than paralysis. And he had learned that sometimes the most important moments were the ones where you had to choose quickly, without knowing all the consequences. Like pulling someone back into a dance when the whole world was watching. Like resigning a position to stay near someone you barely knew. Like saying yes to a life you had not planned but desperately wanted. The door opened behind him and Kira emerged, carrying Alder on her hip. Helena followed, clutching a wooden doll Quinlan had carved for her. "Papa, look," Helena held up the doll. "I made her a dress from the cloth scraps Mama gave me." "It is beautiful," Quinlan said, and meant it. The dress was crooked and the stitches were large, but she had made it herself with small, determined fingers. Kira sat beside him on the bench, and Alder immediately reached for Quinlan, wanting to be held. He took his son into his lap, and the boy settled there contentedly. Helena climbed up on the other side, wedging herself between her parents. "Tell us a story, Papa." "What kind of story?" "A true one. About when you and Mama met," Quinlan glanced at Kira. She smiled. "All right," he said. It was midsummer and there was a masquerade at the manor. He told them the story, editing out the parts that were too complex for children but keeping the important bits. The carved mask. The dancing. The moment when the mask fell and he made his choice. Helena listened with wide eyes. "Were you scared, Papa?" "A little, but I knew what I wanted, and I did not want to let fear stop me from getting it." "What did you want?" He looked at Kira, at the life they had built together, at the children they had made. "I wanted this. All of this." Helena seemed satisfied with that answer. She leaned against him, warm and solid, and yawned. They sat together as the sun finished setting and the stars began to appear. The forest around them was peaceful, settling into its evening rhythms. Somewhere distant, an owl called. This was home, not the cabin, though he loved it, not the land, though he had worked hard to make it productive. Home was these people, this family, the life they had chosen together. Kira reached over and took his free hand. He squeezed gently. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked quietly. He thought about all the choices that had led them here, leaving the militia, taking the gamekeeper position, attending the masquerade, dancing with a stranger, refusing to let her run when her secret was revealed, resigning his position, buying the land, asking her to marry him. "Not a single moment," he said. She smiled. "Good, neither do I." They sat together as the night deepened, their children drowsing in their arms, and Quinlan felt that same deep peace he had felt on their wedding night. The knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged. The past would always be there. The girl he had failed to save. The choices he wished he could undo, but they did not define him anymore. He had made new choices, better choices, and those choices had given him a future worth living. Helena's breathing had gone slow and even. She was asleep. Alder was fighting it, his eyes drooping and then snapping open again in stubborn determination. "We should get them to bed," Kira said. "In a moment. Let them sleep here a little longer." She nodded and leaned against his shoulder. They sat in the peaceful dark, holding their children, holding each other, and Quinlan thought about the carved mask that had started it all. Kira had kept it. It hung on the wall inside the cabin, a reminder of the night they met. Sometimes he looked at it and marveled at how something so simple had changed his life so completely. But it was not the mask that had changed things, he knew. It was the choice he had made when it fell. The choice to reach out instead of pulling back, to move instead of freezing. That choice had given him everything. Finally, when both children were fully asleep, they carried them inside and tucked them into their beds. Helena curled on her side with her doll clutched tight. Alder sprawled on his back, one arm flung out. Quinlan and Kira stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them. "They are good children," Kira said softly. "They are. We are lucky. We are." They retreated to their own bed, tired from the long day. Kira fell asleep quickly, her breathing deep and steady. Quinlan lay awake a while longer, listening to the sounds of his family sleeping around him. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Winter was coming again, but they were ready. They had wood and food in each other. They would be fine. Quinlan closed his eyes and let sleep take him. His last thought before drifting off was simple and true. He was home. The years that followed were full and good. Quinlan and Kira raised their children with love and discipline, teaching them the skills they would need to survive in the frontier. Helena grew into a serious, thoughtful girl who loved working with plants like her mother. Alder was adventurous and bold, always exploring the forest and coming home with scraped knees and wild stories. They added to their homestead bit by bit. A larger garden. A small barn for the goat and chickens. A workshop where Quinlan could work on his crafts during the winter months. Word of Kira's skill as a healer spread, and people came from farther and farther away seeking her help. Some were wary of her at first, put off by her green skin and tusks. But her competence and kindness won most of them over. Quinlan was quietly proud of the way she handled it all, never letting prejudice stop her from doing her work. He took on work as a guide and tracker for hire, using his skills to help hunters and travelers navigate the frontier. It was good money, and it let him spend most of his time near home. He was careful never to take jobs that would keep him away for more than a few days. The community around them slowly changed. More homesteaders arrived, pushing deeper into the frontier. Some were kind, some were not. But Quinlan and Kira had proven themselves valuable enough that most people treated them with respect, if not always warmth. Lord Ashford died when Helena was 6. His son inherited the manor and proved to be more progressive than his father. The new lord made a point of hiring Kira to provide medical care for the manor's workers, paying her fairly and treating her with courtesy. It was a small thing, but it mattered. It was acknowledgement that she belonged here as much as anyone. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Quinlan took Kira back to the manor. The new lord was throwing a harvest festival, similar to the masquerade where they had met. Quinlan had received an invitation, a courtesy extended to all the homesteaders in the area. "We should go," he said. Kira looked skeptical. "You want to return to the place where we caused such a scene? I want to dance with my wife without masks or fear. I think we have earned that," she smiled. "All right, but I am not hiding what I am this time. I would not ask you to." They left the children with a neighbor and rode to the manor on a warm autumn evening. The courtyard was decorated much as it had been 10 years before, with lanterns and tables laden with food. But this time, there were no masks. Just people, dressed in their best, gathering to celebrate the harvest. Quinlan and Kira entered together. He felt the stares, the whispers, but he also saw acceptance on many faces, nods of greeting, a few smiles. The new Lord Ashford approached them. "Brennan, Healer Prell. I am glad you could come." "Thank you for the invitation, my lord," Quinlan said. "I am pleased to have you, both of you." The lord turned to Kira. "My workers speak highly of your skills. I am fortunate to have you caring for them." "I am glad to help," Kira said. The lord moved on to greet other guests, and Quinlan and Kira were left standing in the courtyard. The musicians began to play a familiar tune. Quinlan offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Kira took it. "You may." They moved onto the floor together, and this time there was no hesitation. No mask to hide behind. Just two people who had chosen each other and built a life together. They danced as the sun set and the lanterns glowed. Around them, others joined in, and the courtyard filled with movement and music. When the dance ended, Quinlan held Kira close for a moment longer. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For taking a chance on a strange man who asked you to dance at a masquerade." She laughed. "Thank you for pulling me back in when my mask fell. I would do it again, every time. I know, that is why I love you." They stayed until late, dancing and talking and enjoying the celebration. When they finally left, riding back toward their home under a sky full of stars, Quinlan felt a deep contentment. He had made the right choice that midsummer night. And every choice after had led him here, to this moment, this life, this love. It had been worth every risk, every sacrifice, every moment of fear and uncertainty, because in the end he had found what he had been searching for without knowing it. He had found home.